Hi, everyone. Welcome to Less of Me Success Stories. I'm your host, Robyn Dobbins. My co host, Scott King, will be running the chat tonight. Hi, Scott.
Hey there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We just want you to know that we know what it's like to be helpless and hopeless. Your journey's not over. You can rewrite your story at any time. We provide a platform for people to share stories of how they've reclaimed their life and their journeys through a low carb or some sort of low carb dietary intervention.
Thanks, Scott. Hey, can y'all please take a second to share this link on your socials? We really appreciate all of you in the audience, and thank you for helping our channel grow. As a reminder, none of us are medical professionals. We are not offering medical advice. Please consult with your medical team before attempting any dietary interventions. Now, then we talk about our guests. I met them on X because I'm always drawn towards stories of healing. As we prepared for the show, I learned that our guests have healed or managed several diagnoses. They now enjoy an active lifestyle, and they lost 445 combined pounds. They are passionate about community despite having to face some difficult losses along the way. Yet they continue to recover, knowing their way of life has helped them continue to achieve their goals. Please welcome Scott and Camille Page. Hello, welcome to our show.
Good evening.
We're really glad to be here. We hope that maybe something we can share will help somebody else.
That's our goal too. That's what we love about just the personal stories. You know, we hear from a lot of the doctors and the researchers, and you know, we know what's out there kind of scientifically, but hearing it as it applies to a person just means so much. And you know, maybe what I say doesn't resonate with someone else, but what you say will resonate with that person. So that's why Scott and I wanted to start the show and give that opportunity to people. So, you know, you're going to find a few people out there that are going to go, hey, I can do that because they did it. So I appreciate you guys so much for coming on and telling your story. So the way this works is we just let you go. Tell us whatever you want to tell us. And then we also have a live chat that is happening. So somewhere in the middle, Scott will raise his hand and let us know that there's some questions coming in, and we will ask the questions that are being posted in the live chat. So whoever wants to start between you, go ahead. Let's hear it.
Well, you know, it's interesting. The science, now that we've had a chance, we're about 4 years into this now, and we've had a chance to really get into the science. The science is pretty clear, especially that we have been misled as to what the science was early on. But that's not how we got here. We got here really through prayer. When in 2020, it was the fall of 2020, I was in deep trouble. I couldn't even walk, you know, even to the mailbox without being completely out of breath. I was at that point 550 pounds, and I had a host of problems, which I just attributed to being old, fat, and old, and mostly old. So I went to my pulmonologist and I had cardiologist. I had the pulmonologist said I had COPD, and it was medically necessary for me to have bariatric surgery ASAP. And pulmonologist is like, you got congestive heart failure. And between the two of them, they said, you know, you have weeks to maybe a couple months to live. I don't expect to see Christmas. And so I started doing what I'd always done. And as a health teacher at high school, what I had taught, and as a biologist, I had believed, you know, I got my degree in biology. So I immediately did cut calories and tried to exercise, but really I couldn't really exercise. So all I could do was to try to cut back on my calories and white knuckle it. And while I did make Christmas, I wasn't losing much weight. I did finally get, because of COVID at that time, it was very difficult to get in to see medical people. And I went to the Rockwood Clinic in Spokane, Washington to see Dr. Bright. But I had to get psychological clearance for that because they're looking at bariatric surgery, and there are some psychological complications that come for some people, and some people they just don't want to take them there. I went into Dr. Bright, and he said, "Yeah," he says, he asked me a lot of questions about diets I had heard nothing about. I'd never heard about the Ornish or the Atkins. I mean, I maybe had some passing, he asked me about all these diets. I didn't know. And so he says, "Okay, well, you're going to have to go home and you have to lose more weight because I can't do surgery on you. You're too big. I can't get into to your organs." And that was devastating. And so I did something, even though I was raised with religion, I was very science-based, evidence-based person. And so religion was a little hocus pocus for me. But I had nowhere else to go. I had everything I knew. I had lost a lot of weight in the past, and it's a couple of times in the past, but it always came back with a lot of friends. And so I wasn't having a lot of success here, so I started to pray in March, early March of 2021. I started to pray at night, and I heard the word fervent prayer. I've heard that before in my life, but it really, I actually had fervent prayer. I redefined what fervent prayer was, and then I listened. I didn't hear voices, but I did hear impressions, and I was impressed about fasting. Now, fasting was a hard no. No. Fasting is something you do on Sunday. You miss breakfast when you go to church. That's a fast. And no, I'm not, fat. But this went night after night after night. I would get, and actually, I was raised and went to a parochial school in middle school, high school. So I had some scripture training, and anyway, scriptures were coming back to me associated with fasting. And I was almost like I was getting evangelized in my mind. I could hear promptings, and it was very specific that I needed to fast for 36 hours, and I needed to do it repeatedly. By mid-April, and every time I'm like, no. And I was like, well, Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Yeah, I'm not Jesus. Just ask my kids. I am not Jesus. But it was like one day. So I did it in middle of April. And Camille thought I was kind of nuts.
But he lived through it.
I lived through it. And it was actually kind of empowering. And I don't remember what day of the week it was, but a couple of days later, I did it again. And then I'm like, I feel impressed. You could say inspired, impressed, whatever. I felt impressed to do it twice a week. And so I started doing it. And I just, I'd never heard of any of this in terms of health benefits. And the weight started to fall off. And it started to fall off. And then in August, in my social media feed, then a guy named Jason Fung came across my screen. I'm like, Jason Fung. And so I watched a couple of his videos. I'm like, he's talking about intermittent fasting. That's what I'm doing. And so I started, and that was kind of my on-ramp into being more formal and looking at the science behind it and listening to what he had to say and learning what Jason Fung, and then progressively more academics eventually led to people like Ken Berry and Dr. Tro eventually on X and a number of others. And of course, Ben Bickman is my all-time hero right now. He's a professor at BYU who has just phenomenal research. And I started learning about insulin and insulin resistance, and I'm losing a lot of weight, but I'm also starting to walk a little bit. Initially I wanted to walk because I still believed exercising would help me lose weight. And then I actually sat and figured out how many calories I was burning. I'm like, yeah, I'm not burning many calories for all this work. That's a fool's errand right there. But I did feel better, and it did give me mental clarity. And Camille's watching this, and she's going, yeah, he's doing well. And I look back now at my recordings of how much I'd walked, and it was a pittance. It was just a pittance, but it was making a difference. And then, you know, I don't know, why don't you talk a little bit about when you started to realize it had some benefits?
Well, about a year after he was really starting to get into it, decided that maybe I could do it too. Well, he was going to quit. There's a local, well, semi-local race, walk, whatever, called Bloomsday in Spokane, and he wanted to do that. That was his goal. And then afterwards, he met his goal, so he was ready to stop walking. And I decided pretty much the only way I was going to get him to keep walking is if I went with him. So I did, and the next year we walked together, and the year after we walked together. And since that time, I don't know, it's been 4,000 miles or so for me. You know, we're still walking. I don't know how far you've walked total, but it's longer than I have. He walks through COVID, rain, snow. He's better than the mailman.
I've got 500, and I don't know, I'm coming up on 550 or so consecutive days walking at least 5 miles in the mornings. And that's been through 2 bouts of COVID, which you would think that would be the hardest, was COVID. And not that it wasn't easy, but the hardest days along the way, I decided, well, once I'd done Bloomsday, which for me was when I first set out to say, hey, maybe I could do Bloomsday. She's like, yeah, honey, you just keep thinking that, you know, that's never going to happen. But then when I did it, and like she said, I was like, okay, I've done it. I did it. Well, after doing that, I'm like, I need to do something more. And so I started saying, you know, I could do a marathon. I'm not going to run a marathon. My joints, for hauling around as much weight as I did, as long as I did. I mean, I had that kind of weight for 4 decades. Yeah, so my joints are shot, but I could walk a marathon. And so I started to set my sights on training to walk a marathon, not a formal marathon where you get a t-shirt, although I'd love to have a t-shirt. But, and then on June 6th of 2023, at about 2 a.m, because I wanted to beat the heat, I set out and started to walk. I had we've got a urban route here that I developed. It was a little more than a marathon, just slightly more. It's about 27 miles. And I went out and I did it. I came and I did a marathon. And the days that were hardest walking weren't that day. It was the following day after the marathon, because I was sore. And I did 6 marathons last year. And then I did 1 this year just to prove that I still could. There's not a lot of metabolic benefit from doing that, I don't believe, but there's an awful lot of psychological or mental empowerment. And I mean, when I was really, really sick and disabled, I mean, I was placard on the window level disabled, you know, special parking spots and all that. But when I was that, I would actually dream about being able to walk or run or ride a horse. And now I do it every morning. So along the way, some other things happened. We have a little mountain behind our house called Candy Mountain. And I said, one of my little goals that I set out was I want to walk up Candy Mountain. It only goes up, I don't know, 1,200 feet or so. Mm-hmm. So it's not a huge mountain by any stretch of imagination. It's not real rigorous. There's no technical skills or anything. It's got to put one foot in front of the other and keep doing it. And so I did that, and then I thought, oh, I'm in trouble now, because walking downhill is much more difficult for me than walking uphill, because my knees were just shot. And so I started walking down Candy Mountain, and my knees were okay. And I mean, I'm bone on my knees. They've wanted to replace my knee joints for a long time, and I've just been too chicken. And what I found was that, first of all, I had lost a lot of weight, so that helped. But more than that, I had regenerated apparently cartilage or whatever is in the knee to help cushion it, and I was able to walk down without pain. And so we've done Candy Mountain quite a number of times now.
And in the midst of all of the walking and such, we've changed our diet. Shouldn't probably call it diet, but our method of eating,
our lifestyle.
Yeah. And at first it was just trying to give up sugar, and then we give up grains, and that was very difficult for me.
Well, early on my walking, what do you do for 2 hours when you're walking? You know, I mean, people say, "Oh, you get bored. Don't you get bored?" No, I was listening to podcasts and this sort of thing. And I was in North Carolina listening to a podcast one day, visiting my brother, and there was a guy on. It was a guest on Mike Rowe's show. His name was Vinnie Tortorich, and it was the first time. You take no sugar.
And he, of course, promotes the no sugar, no grain aspect, and we're going to try that. We can do that.
So wow, I'm getting teary.
It's okay.
One of the things that happened, I'll go to the tears and address that a little bit. I'd been on SSRIs, antidepressants, since late 80s, early 90s. I was one of the first victims of those drugs, and was completely dependent on it as an antidepressant. And then along the way, I also was on anti-anxiety meds. Well, along the way, I realized my antidepressants are every day on schedule. The anti-anxiety meds were based on need. When anxiety I'd take a pill. I suddenly realized I hadn't refilled my anti-anxiety meds in a long time. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. I'm not using anti-anxiety meds, and I haven't had anxiety, and I'm a whole lot more comfortable in social situations than I've ever been in memory. And then I came upon a book by Chris Palmer, again, one of these things that popped into my feed. And Chris Palmer and George Eade are just amazing, amazing scientists, both psychiatrists, and they're looking at the impact of metabolism, specifically the mitochondria, on psychiatric issues. And and I read Chris Palmer's book twice. Georgia Eade's her book just came out recently, this last winter, which is actually a lot more approachable than Chris's book. But with Chris's book, then a year ago, July, I decided I wanted to see if I could quit taking antidepressants because I didn't feel that I needed them. And Chris Palmer actually reached out to me in X because I put that out on my account, and he said, "Whoa, slow your roll, buddy. Slow your roll." Is like this, and I can't remember whether with him or subsequent research was basically having been on them as long as I had been, I would probably need extended inpatient therapy, inpatient treatment to get off of these. But that's not an option here. I just didn't have that as an option. So I decided to very slowly ramp myself off of my SSRIs. So over the next 5 months, I would, every couple of weeks, I would drop back my dose. And I'm really glad that she's still sitting next to me because it was tough on Camille.
It wasn't pretty.
Very, very difficult journey. But very worthwhile. And then once I finally was off of them, it started in July, was in October, and we had some absolutely excruciating personal challenges during that time anyway. Very, very difficult challenges that made it even more difficult. But then in October, I was then off of them, but I wasn't done. There was a lot of healing, and what it had left me, all those decades of having my emotions muted had left me with basically just infantile control of my emotions. I could only do two things. I could rage or I could cry, just like an infant. And so for the next couple of months, I raged and cried. But I cried for good things and I raged for bad things. And then over the course, I then, of course, then kind of maturing again, gaining emotional control. But when I talk about something like Vinnie Tortorich, it's so powerful that I lose my voice. It's just so, or there was a young man who performed in church one day, violin, and I watched him start off and he was tentative. You know, he was in front of people. And all of a sudden, halfway through, he hit his stride and he finished triumphant and he pulled that bow off his violin and I bawled. It was really amazing. So it's,
Before you move on from that, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I am, because this is my journey too, is mental health. And I don't think that I've ever really associated any of that before until you just said it, but I cry at random things all the time, but it's the appropriate, like the same thing. It's not my kids performing, but it's somebody's kids performing. And I'm just like, I'm so proud of them. I can't believe it. And I'm just like weeping. And then my family, of course, is pointing fingers and making fun of me. But I just never associate. So I appreciate the fact. I just wanted to cut in and say I appreciate how you explain that, because I do exactly the same thing. I'm weeping, just emotionally telling a story, and I can't explain why, but it's just happening. So thank you. And I do want to just put that disclaimer out there, as Dr. Palmer had warned you. Anyone who is trying to wean off of, especially mental health meds, but any medication, it is not to be taken lightly. This was Scott's personal choice to do it the way he did it, but please, 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 if you can, work with a provider. So
absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. You definitely want as much mental health as, and there is I have a friend who's a therapist. He lives just around the corner. Visited with him some, but really my therapist is right here, and I call her coach. You know, I think we fly model airplanes. We're in the model airplane club, and we have a lot of friends who are, older like us. And I say, hey, ask, if she'd be able. I say, go ask the coach. And I call her coach all the time because she is my coach. In fact, when you ask about the promo, what songs do you want for a promo? And I said, Tub Thumping, which you used, but the other one is You're My Best Friend.
Yes, we are best friends. Part of the journey too was my health. I'd been diagnosed diabetic, and they said probably been diabetic for over 40 years, but it hadn't been caught. I had allergies, asthma, fibromyalgia, a host of things, and arthritis and such. And once we started reading and listening to Dr. Fung, it took a little more importance to me, since he's a nephrologist, and being diabetic, I was seeing a nephrologist. And so I gave him some credibility and read his book. And that's really when I started getting into it. Fasting was difficult, but I lived through it. I started losing weight. My A1C started to drop. I had been at one point 9.6 for my A1C, or 9.7. Okay. I was taking insulin, 120 units a day, and oral medications, and I was still fighting the diabetes. But after the intermittent fasting, starting to lose weight, I was able to back off. I quit insulin, much to my doctor's, dismay, because he said, you'll never get off of insulin. But I was off of insulin. I was able to quit taking my oral medications. And my A1C has now dropped to 6.5. And
now this is an interesting little side piece. She's a 6.5 right now based on a home test, but we're going to follow up with that using fructosamine test. Because so real quick for your listeners, the HbA1c is based off of the glycation of the red blood cells. But there is a belief, and Dr. Ken Berry has done some work on this, that when people start to eat carnivore or very healthy keto, very low carb, the red blood cells live longer. They apparently live longer, and so a higher proportion of them get glycated. So a lot of times people will go to a very strong ketovore or carnivore diet, and their A1C will then creep back up. So fructosamine is another test that can be done, which looks at, well, fructosamine, which is a product of glucose metabolism in the body, and that shows your glycemic control over the past 2 to 3 weeks. And so she actually tomorrow she'll be doing a blood draw for fructosamine, because we want to drill down on that, because she was at 6.2 for quite a while. And then even though her continuous glucose monitor shows her having better glycemic control and lower blood sugars, her A1C test is a little higher. And so we suspect, but we'll have to follow up on this. We're going to look at, then we'll compare the fructosamine results and see because that you can get an average estimated glucose from that, estimated average glucose, and you can get estimated average glucose from HbA1c. We'll compare the two based on what Dr. Ken Berry said, and Philip Ovadia as well, that Dr. Ovadia, who's a cardiologist, is that we expect to find out that the fructosamine is going to show that she's actually got a lower average glucose along the lines of what her CGM shows.
That's really interesting. I've never heard of that before. So is this a lab that you can just go to your doctor and ask for, or was it difficult to find someone who knew how to do that test?
It's funny you ask about going to your doctor, because our doctor won't even do an insulin test without going crazy on him. So I can't think of his name right now. Dave Feldman has ownyourlabs.com. And Own Your Labs is a great way to, we take charge of our health. We no longer rely on our doctor for anything except for writing scripts. He's a great guy, nice guy, but he's on a conveyor belt treating patients every 5 minutes, and we're kind of, well, they say in medicine, if you hear hooves, think horses, not zebras, but we're kind of zebras. And so people coming in with maybe an elevated LDL immediately think statins, not, hey, they're not eating any carbs, therefore their body is trafficking in fats. That's their. So no, we go to ownyourlabs.com, and it's actually cheaper. You could actually go to LabCorp and order it, but it costs more if you go straight to LabCorp than if you go to Own Your Labs, because they've cut a deal or a contract with LabCorp. So we still go to LabCorp to have the draw, and we still have LabCorp do all the work. We just do Own Your Labs, and so that's where we get the blood work. And we do insulin every single month.
But you can check insulin and A1C for under $20.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, with Own Your Labs, which is, that's really good. And so our insulin, hers is like 4.6, which is, for a diabetic, that's astounding. And I run between 2.4 and 2.6, which is not quite Clark Kent, but it's more of a Bruce Banner. In terms of, it's a pretty darn good insulin. And so much so that I've actually recently, I've stopped fasting, because the point of fasting is to lower insulin. But I'm down so low now, I don't know that it's necessary. Now, I'm going to watch my monthly labs and adjust, and also watch the scale, but not so much the scale as the insulin. Insulin is what really medicine is missing, and what people are missing. They hear insulin, and they don't understand that all these COPD, depression, diabetes, obesity, all of these diseases of civilization are all driven by hyperinsulinemia, too much insulin, because our body cells become resistant to the insulin. Now, I never really knew that when I started. Like I say, I started with prayer, but subsequently I've really got in way, not just the rabbit hole, man. I've gone all the way to the center of the earth with this, and I follow Ben Bickman's research on this, religiously, if I dare say that. So between us, I mean, she mentioned a lot of things that she's cured, but one thing she had a ticking time bomb we did not know about, and we now know a lot more about it. She was on statins for 20 years.
Or more.
Yeah. And what we didn't know is that some statins actually cause diabetes. They cause glycemic control problems, and but they kind of gloss that over. And so with her diabetes, she had the ticking time bomb. And so then in May, 2 weeks after her first Bloomsday, which is a 12K walk, she had the Widowmaker. She had the full MI. She was within 10 minutes of dying. She went, can we kind of have a little joke about that? I took her, it was a Sunday, I took her to Joanne Fabric in a neighboring community. And because our Joanne was being remodeled, it was in a neighboring community, and fortunately have a level 3 trauma center very close to Joanne Fabric. But what must have given her the heart attack was I gave her $100 and said, "Hey, go have some fun." And she went, and then I get this call from her, and she was down in the store. And so I helped. We didn't know it was a heart attack at this point. She was just very, very sick. And I went to the hospital, and they helped us in, and she was in the cath lab in minutes, because it was, and they're all trying to be real coy. Like I can't read a strip. I could see what was going on.
And they said, "I think I detect an MI." It's like, I know what an MI is.
Yeah, everybody knows what an MI. And so, so she was in the cath lab. And what came of that was, well, first of all, the cardiologist said, "Yeah, statins have failed you. And she's no longer, took her off statins." They tried PCSK9 3, I think it is,
I can't remember.
which is a different type of cholesterol lowering drug that also drove her glycemic control out of control. So, and we've gotten a lot more educated as far as the role of cholesterol being more of a band-aid. It's not the causative agent of atherosclerosis, but it's a band-aid for the damage done by high blood pressure, hypertension, and by lack of glycemic control, diabetes. So she had this time bomb for a long time, but they not only said, "Yeah, you don't need to do statins. That's not going to help you," but they said, "You saved your own life. You literally saved your life." And when they released her, they first said, her first question was, "Am I going to be able to continue walking? I walk every day." And they're like, "Yeah, honey, that's not going to happen. Maybe down the block, you work." Well, within 72 hours, when she was released,
48.
Okay.
48.
They're like, "Yeah, okay, so we're going to limit you to 2 miles a day." Not because of your heart, because they did the echocardiogram, which it was, she had no damage. She got off scot-free.
2 stents, but no damage.
No damage.
Wow.
So you're limited to 2 miles only because we had to go into the femoral artery to put the stents, and we don't want that to leak. And you don't want that leaking. That would be a bad thing. So she went out and she was walking and I actually had to, "Okay, could you slow down a little bit?" And I'm like really being all concerned for her. And she was, I don't know, within a week or so, she was back up to her 6 miles again and doing 6 miles a day.
But several doctors told me that I would not have survived if we hadn't lost the weight and changed our lifestyle methods of eating. And they were pretty blunt that the ketovore carnivore thing is a big part of saving my own life.
Well, yeah,
This is reminding us of our friend Eddie. You may know Eddie as well. He was on one of our episodes. I don't remember which number now, but he had that aortic dissection, and that's what his doctors told him. And he realized then that all the work he had been putting into his lifestyle before this happened, instead of asking like, why did this happen, he realized that all the work that he put in before that got him through it so he could be there. And it makes his story even more inspiring. Camille, that makes your story inspiring. And you talked about how this started with this power of prayer. And here you were, not in your town where you could have been, but you happened to be in the place with the trauma center. And it's like, those prayers that you were praying then and continued you've had these interventions. Yes, you've learned a lot scientifically along the way, but you were in the right place at the right time for such a horrible thing to happen.
Well, and some people,
and that's something you can't answer why that happened, and it just did. So that's amazing. Go ahead.
Some people think, well, yeah, you changed your diet, you start eating more fat, and boom, you had a heart attack. Therefore, the fat caused a heart attack. But the cardiologist and such were all, and it's very clear that's not. This was a ticking time bomb that had been there for years, and it happened when it happened. It was not associated with the diet at all, which is kind of a relief to me, because I wouldn't want that to be the case. But we've been conditioned. We've been told for so many years that cholesterol, saturated fat's going to cause heart disease. And so, but it doesn't do it. First of all, it doesn't do it that quick. And second of all, that's not the situation here. She's doing much, much better. But other people in our life, they didn't accept that. They thought, oh, you brought this on yourself. And at one point, so it was the day that I came home from my first marathon. There was a white sedan out in front of the house when I came around the last corner to the house. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting, because our street is pretty quiet, not much happens. And I get to the house, and there's 2 investigators at our house from Adult Protective Services. And we had been reported to Adult Protective Services, both of us with 4 charges or items. For each of us, it was self-neglect. For me, it was, they accused me, or I had been accused of elder abuse, because somebody had thought that I was making her walk, and her for diminished mental capacity. And this was quite the challenge. And so I'd been walking, I just walked 27 miles. And before I'd gotten home, they'd already given her some mental evaluations, some puzzles to do and what have you. And then they immediately wanted me to pass some cognitive testing. Okay, I've been up since 2 a.m. It's now, but I did it. And then for the next couple of months, they wanted to dive into all of our medical records to see that we've been compliant on filling our prescriptions. And most of the stress of all this was intrinsic. It's because we're like, wow, we don't know who did this. We have no idea who did this. Nobody will admit to it. Somebody did this to us. And it was just gut-wrenching. I mean, we had suspicions, but ultimately, there was, of course, they almost were apologetic. And after a couple of months where they said, yeah, there's nothing here, don't worry about it. But what was really interesting was both of the investigators had begun intermittent fasting, which we talked with him just about 3 months ago, the one investigator again. And yeah, they had continued with that. It was working for them. So kind of a weird twist on all that. Subsequently, we found out at least one person who had been involved, and it was a family member. They had done it for the right reason. It was the wrong thing for the right reason. Yeah, that was kind of and that's what led to, like I say, we had that dovetailed right into when I started tapering down on my antidepressants, and so it was a challenging time. But she's done, her heart's really good. She still has a cardiologist because now she is post MI. Me, on the other hand, I no longer have a cardiologist. My doctor, Dr. Alsamara, he is young, smart, but he came in to the operating or to the examination room after my last visit to him, and he checked to see again if I was who I said I was. And Scott, you probably had to reintroduce yourself to people after losing as much weight as you lost, which I've had to do many times. And so he said, yeah, that's me. He started to cry.
That's awesome.
The doctor was openly weeping. He said that he'd never had a patient do that, and he exited him, graduated him.
He says that you're the first patient who leaves my practice not in a box.
That's
Well,
huge.
That's amazing. That's huge. Did he ask questions? Did he ask how you did it? Was he willing to do the same thing with other patients?
No. How I did it that didn't seem to occur to him how I did it, but just that I had done it. And at that point,
He's patting himself on the back for his great treatment options, and you're like, well, no, I just kind of changed everything.
yeah. And my pulmonologist and I had a real interesting discussion because he put me on a breathing treatment. I can't think of what it's called, doesn't matter, but it had just come on the market and it was not covered by insurance, and it was very expensive. It's like $1,200 a month. And so I had been on this for quite a while, and I went into him and I'm like, yeah, I don't use that anymore. And he said, well, no, you don't understand. And this guy is old. He's been practicing for 50 years. And he says, you don't understand, son. He said, that's old. He calls me son. He says, you can't be cured of COPD. And I says, I'm not saying I'm cured. What I'm saying is I don't need this medicine, because I'm walking. At that point, I was walking 8 miles a day. I'm walking 8 miles. I got no problems. I'm breathing fine. My oxygen saturation had changed dramatically, absolutely dramatically. When I first went into him in fall of 2020, I'd been to him before that, but in fall of 2020, I was in like 40% lung function. I was in deep doo. And I had increased that to like 136% a year and a half downstream. So I was doing better than somebody my age, which he also found inexplicable. So I was kicking it, but he says, okay. So finally, we kind of wrestled around on this. You need to take this prescription, and he finally says, okay, well, I'm gonna write this script. I'm gonna put it in my top desk drawer, and you come over in a couple of weeks when you need it, and I'll have it for you. I haven't seen him since. And I don't need that expensive medicine, and I've come off of a whole bunch of other meds as well, because I don't need them. Now, I started off trying just to be able to get my oxygen saturation up, because at the time I have grandkids that live in Utah, and they're circa 5,000 feet. And at that point, we have a mountain pass near us called Chinook Pass. And it's also about 5,000 feet. When I would get to that altitude, my oxygen saturation would drop so much I would lose consciousness. I wasn't like all of a sudden dead. I would just get dizzier and dizzier, and I'd start to, whack out and stuff in my eyes, and just, she would talk to me, and I couldn't drive, obviously, and so I wasn't going to be able to go see my grandkids in Utah, and I didn't realize that I had gone to Utah several times the previous couple of years, and I always was really sick when I was down there, really sick. Well, now I know why. I didn't know at the time. So my big motivation was I had to get do whatever it took to get my oxygen saturation improved.
So my question is, because I mean, you've gone and you've said a lot of things. Actually, I want to say something to our audience. You please ask your questions in the chat. We didn't break in at the 30-minute mark, so I just want to make sure everybody knows that you can ask your questions. But my question is, you were talking about I'm doing well for my age compared to other people my age, and we were talking before we went live about that, like how we expect as we age that these things are going to happen. So you were already in that trap. So how many specialists were you seeing, and how many how many different medications were you on for the different things that the specialists were talking about, if you can even remember, because it seems like it was probably a lot.
I was on over 20.
I was on about 15. And the only medications I still have are, I've got
You have 2 hormonal ones.
two that are hormone based. One for thyroid, and so that's and that's all I have now. So
yes, yeah, if your thyroid doesn't work anymore, there's really nothing you can do but continue to take medication. I have to do the same thing, so I understand that as well. But that's amazing. So you went from 35 medications down to 1.
half a dozen between us.
I still take a few more, but yeah.
I got a couple, and you've got a few, but
yeah, I mean, so once you have a heart event, I guess they do want to make sure you stay on a medication. So yeah, that would make sense too. And I do want to clarify, you were diagnosed as type 2 diabetic?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure I clarified that. I believe Scott is getting questions from our chat, so I'm going to turn it over to him to ask you guys some questions.
So this is from Carolyn R. She's got a statement and also follows up with a question. She said that she's so involved listening and absorbing, and it makes her hopeful for a loved one that has COPD. And she said, thank you for that. She also asked, what does a typical day of food look like for you two?
Well, anymore, as time has gone by, we've gotten progressively lower and lower carb. We've dabbled with full-on carnivore, but not so much anymore. So for me in the morning, where we're at now, I mean, it's evolved. This has been a continual evolvement. It's people talk about a journey, and we're going by all these different wayposts. And where we're at now, we generally will get up and we'll do our 6 miles in the morning. Then, and then afterwards we'll eat. Usually we'll have like
meat and eggs.
Meat and eggs, yeah. I have a mackerel or sardines every single day because I'm kind of a believer in the omega-3, and mackerel has more omega-3 than sardines, and it's also a whole lot more palatable than sardines. And if you heard Dr. Boz, she's all about sardines, and I don't know if I've never heard her talk about mackerel, but I found that mackerel's a whole lot more palatable. It's more like if you were to cross sardine and tuna, it's in between, but it has half again more omega-3 than sardines. So I have mackerel every day.
And we don't eat 3 meals a day. We don't really have much for snacking. We can get by on 1 or 2 meals.
Yeah.
And
some days 1 meal. And when we say snack, the word snack in America means carbs. When we say snack, it's going to be a beef stick,
hard-boiled egg,
piece of cheese, something like that. And I should mention also that along the way, we're not monks. We're not living in a monastery where we have to go without. So we've got, and we're also both pretty talented in the kitchen. So we put together a website, which I don't know if I mentioned it to you guys before. We've got a website called Improvisational Keto Kitchen. And we've come up with and are continuing to come up with recipes, or we take kind of a musical approach to this because my wife was a music teacher. That's for the improvisational, and we're improvising in the kitchen. So like the very first one we put out there we call it chup cakes. And if you've ever been to Costco and you've had their poppy seed muffins, These are every bit as good as those, and there's no carbs. And I mean no carbs. It's not almond flour. It's not coconut flour. We're doing this with cream cheese and eggs, Alice. And so one of the secrets we found is that you cook these in the microwave. So the leavening is a combination of baking soda, cream of tartar, which gives you a baking powder. But baking powder has starches added into it. So we don't want that. So we make our own leavening. And then in the microwave, it'll flash into vapor, which then gives you all your little air pockets. And when it flashes, then it sets. And so these are light, fluffy cupcakes. You can do them in the oven, and they're going to be nasty little cookies because they don't rise up. And so we've taken the chaffle recipe and we've added our leavening to that, and so you get a much more airy waffle.
One of my favorite, I'm most proud of, are noodles, because I miss pasta. And that's about the worst thing I can possibly eat. So we've developed a noodle that's made out of eggs and unflavored gelatin.
Beef gelatin.
Beef gelatin. And that's it, just the eggs and the gelatin.
So she cooks these in a skillet, in a big circle, on a skillet on the stove, and then takes them to our pasta maker to do the cutting into the noodle shape.
Or with a scalpel or razor blade or whatever.
Yeah, initially we were using a scalpel and slicing them up, and it's wonderful. She's made lasagna with it. I'll make macaroni and cheese with it, and Alfredo is amazing. Garlic Parmesan, it's amazing, and it's noodle, but it's not a carb noodle, and so we get that same mouthfeel. And I actually think it tastes better than real noodles. There's more flavor to it, and it's a good flavor.
Probably a lot more filling.
Literally egg noodles.
Yeah,
exactly.
It sounds amazing. And I did take a look at your website because you had put it in the information that you had sent me. And yes, there's a lot of great stuff that you have going there. And I love that you experiment in the kitchen and then decided to share that with everyone, because I mean, that happens all the time. Everybody's always asking, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? So, I mean, that's your giving back. Besides just telling your story, you have this other outlet to give back, and I definitely appreciate that. Were you going to say something, Scott?
Well, I was thinking, one of the things that's really helped us is allulose. And I learned about allulose. There's a couple of guys, I was listening to them, two keto dudes, and I don't think they're making a podcast anymore. But I learned about allulose through two keto dudes a couple of years back. And allulose, and there's a lot of new studies coming out about allulose. For those who don't know, it's a rare sugar. It is actually sugar, but it's a rare sugar that has virtually no metabolic consequence at all. Your sugar alcohols are sweet, but they give you what I call the brown waterfall of shame, severe diarrhea. So you got to be really careful of those. But allulose has about 1/10 of the caloric value of sucrose. It's almost as sweet as sucrose, and it behaves pretty much like sucrose. So when I want to make, for example, lemonade, I love lemonade. I take, 2 cups of lemon juice, the real lemon juice, 2 cups of allulose, and a gallon of water, mix it to make a gallon of lemonade. And I've got lemonade that's just like lemonade. And she's got a CGM, so I've got a built-in tester right there. Doesn't move her glucose up at all. Allulose is another thing Dr. Ben Bickman is very excited about, because it looks like it's the real deal. Naturally occurring allulose occurs in things like figs, raisins, maple syrup, some other things in very, 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 very small quantities. And so they've come up, and it was deemed to be of absolutely no commercial interest when it was first discovered back in like 1917 or so, or 20 or something, because nothing will ferment, because it has no metabolic value. So it was discarded, and now it's like, well, wait a minute, it's sweet and it doesn't hurt the body in any way that they've found. And so we really like it. So we're able to make our own taco seasoning, and we use allulose in our taco seasoning. We make our own barbecue seasoning, our own barbecue sauce. So we're not doing without in a lot of those things. Now we do without Krispy Kremes, but hey, I've still got Krispy Kremes I ate 10 years ago on my side, so I don't have to worry about eating another one.
Like you said, we're not monks, and if we've had a good day with our eating and such, we reward ourselves, and we have a little disc of chocolate. And this is the Gold's chocolate that's made with allulose. And so it doesn't affect my glucose at all.
Yeah, so Goals is Goalz, and they're an allulose-based chocolate. And they have the disc is about this big, and they have hazelnut, coconut, toppings on them. And so that's it's the size of a sacrament wafer, if you're familiar with that.
I
It's the
am,
size-
yes.
That's the size of a sacrament wafer, and that's almost our sacrament. At the end of the night, we go in, and there'll be on my pillow, there'll be a little Gold's chocolate, because we've been good that day. We met our we call it a declaration. I declare that I'm going to do this today. I met my declaration. So whether it's fast, or whether it's eat one meal, or whether it's whatever. So that's our reward, and it's good. It's dark chocolate. It's really good dark chocolate.
And I love that you have found what works for you. Some people that may not work for them, but you found that it works for you. And I actually had the opportunity to hear Dr. Richard Johnson, who is doing a lot of studies on allulose. He's out of Colorado University. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's also a nephrologist. So if you haven't heard of him, you probably want to look into him. And they are talking about some amazing other benefits, as far as it's like blocking some interactions that people were having with their insulin. And so, I can see why there's a lot of excitement around it. It may not be what I would do, because if I taste something sweet, it's going to trigger a lot of stuff for me, but it is working very well. It's very much a bridge for people also. So I can understand why there's a lot of excitement about it. And I'm glad that it's working. It's hard to just be like, I can't have that stuff again, ever, so you've been able to do that.
I totally get the addiction part, because, sometimes if anything sweet will then fire somebody's addiction. And I totally get that. What we're finding is that, yeah, we're addicted to sweet. I mean, I totally am. But if I can meet that addiction with this sweet, I don't feel so bad about it anymore. The other thing we're trying right now is a new product called Munch Munch, which I think it's Lustig has come out with.
Mhm.
And they had all kinds of delays in production, but our initial data points are pretty good. Now, it doesn't do anything for blood glucose, but what it seems to do is tie up the glucose, or tie up the sugars in dietary glucose. So last night she had a bowl of berries with cream, but prior to that she had Munch Munch, and her glucose only went up 8 points. Now the day before she had maybe 10 carrots, little baby carrots, and her glucose went up 90 points. So for reference, that's only one day apart. Same thing. So we're still gonna play with the Munch Munch, but it might be another dietary tool that people can use to work around their addictions. And then I try to fill the bill on my addictions with beef sticks. I know we've got a recipe for beef sticks on our website. We make barbecue beef sticks, pepper garlic beef sticks, and taco beef sticks, and they're really good. I mean, they're better, cheaper than. I started it because I found that jerky and such was all polluted with all kinds of stuff I don't want. Well, I want to make it my own, so I go to the what do you call that store that we buy the meat at? The
Chef store.
The chef store, or whatever it's called, and I buy a big package of pectoral trimmings, which is really, really super lean trimmings around the brisket, very tough meat. You use it for stew meat or whatever. We grind that up and we turn that into these beef sticks, smoke it, dehydrate it. And so that's my, if I feel I need to fill my addiction, and I do.
No sugar, no preservatives, and a whole lot cheaper.
And no carbs.
No carbs.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that Munch Munch. That's if I remember correctly, it's a fiber, right? It's supposed to be fiber, but it's kind of like it's supposed to scrub out.
We call it a sponge.
Yeah, right. It's like a fiber sponge, so that it helps you.
Now
I guess relieve that burden.
The claim is that it'll take the carbs, convert them to a fiber, and then that will feed the gut biome. That's the claim. For me, the only metric I'm going to be able to look at is her CGM, and if she can have something that's got like berries or carrots and not have her glycemic climb, that's all. I don't. It's not that I don't care about gut biome. I have no way to measure that, and I'm very much about mechanisms. I'm very much about measuring, which is why we do labs all the time, this sort of thing.
You'll have to send all of your tests, your experiments that you've done on Camille to Dr. Lustig. I'm sure he'd be very interested in it. I did hear him on an interview on, which one was it? I think Low Carb MD podcast, where he was talking about it. So if anybody's curious about it, he talks about it there. And I'm sure any more recent interview with Dr. Lustig, he discusses it because it's his new project.
He's kind of gone silent on X lately, which is unfortunate. I don't know if it's because, well, I say they really had a problem with their rollout on this product. It was really delayed. I was pretty upset, but when I saw how it was affecting her, I'm like, well, maybe I'm just going to get over that, and we'll see. Because if it makes a big difference, then it's worthwhile. It's not cheap either.
I'm sure it's new and it's not experimental. I'm sure they've tested it on a lot of people before they rolled it out, but it is new and it's not well known yet. So it's going to be harder to find, but that's very interesting. It's fascinating.
She said it tastes like matcha tea. And when I asked her, I said, it's supposed to taste like berry? And she says, no, it's not berry. It's more like grass. And then she said, no, it's kind of like matcha tea, which, okay, if it does what it's supposed to do, that's okay.
Hey, it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
It's out there. And, these doctors like Dr. Lustig, or Dr. Bickman talking about allulose, it's like, okay, when they get excited about something, it's good to listen. It's good to see what it is. And I mean, if it's a sugar and you have a sugar addiction, perhaps that's not the right thing for you. But if you don't have that problem, it may be a great thing for you. And it's not for us to decide or dismiss what will work for someone and what won't work for someone. So I think it's really interesting that you've tried both of those things and they both work well for you.
You don't know what's going to work for you until you try to see what will work for you, but you also don't know what works for you unless you measure. I get a kick out of people who say, I'm on a keto diet. You say, well, what's your ketone level? What? What's a ketone level? Oh, I've heard of those P strips. No. You need to look at the BHB. You need to check. And I tell people, and I've got several people that I have friends that are working on. I say, every morning, take your blood ketones, take your blood, your glucose. Do those, take your blood levels and keep track of them, because you're not going to know if you're progressing if you don't measure, which, we're almost at the end of our time. And so I guess there's one final thing I need to say is that if you're just starting this process, start by measuring. And the number one thing before you get going is get your fasting insulin and track that over time, because your fasting insulin is going to move significantly before your weight moves significantly. The fasting insulin is the upstream measure you want to see how you're doing with diabetes, obesity, PCOS. It's the number you want to be doing, and it's only about, around $10 to get it tested. You can order the lab yourself. You go in, you get a little prick, they get a little blood, and then you know where you're at. And if you're above 10, you're in trouble. You're going to have a difficult time losing weight. If you're below 6, you're in the League of Champions. But most of Americans are probably above 25. And that's where it all starts. I hear your dog.
Well, and what's good to note about that too is that it has nothing to do with weight or how you look on the outside. So you can start testing this stuff and be really surprised that your health is not what you thought it was based on how you look. So, I like that. So here's the thing, Scott. I ask a question at the end of every single episode, and that question is, what's one piece of advice that you would give someone who is just embarking on their health journey? And you beat me to the punch. So you're disqualified from the question, and I'm going to ask Camille. Camille, do you have a piece of advice that would be great for someone who is just embarking on their health journey?
Get a partner. Have someone available to keep you accountable. Ideally, they'll do the same thing with you, but if that doesn't work, have someone that you can talk to or text every single day with your numbers and how you're feeling, and not wait, just how you're feeling and your glucose.
Well, yeah. If you're doing your daily testing, like, so I have a friend in Texas, and she texts me every morning when I wake up. There's a text message on my phone, and it's got her. She used to send her weight. I don't want to know weight. I don't want to know about your weight change. I want to know about your glucose and your ketones, and if you do insulin, your insulin, which you only would do like on a monthly basis. Those are the.
Now, she went through a phase where she was really upset that she wasn't losing weight. And then all of a sudden she said, well, she's not losing weight, but she's down 2 dress sizes. And that's what counts. It's not the numbers on the scale.
Right. The scale's a liar. I don't know. I don't want anybody to think that scale is telling you the truth. It's just, you pushing down on something with the gravity. All of the other stuff that's happening that you can't see, that you need to measure, that's what matters. And it's not just you standing on that scale. There's so much more. I love both of your answers, even though I said you were disqualified. Your answer was spot on. So I love both of your answers. And we have run out of time. This went very, very quickly. I want to thank you both for joining us. Like I said at the beginning, something that you're going to say is going to resonate with someone, and it did. We saw that in the chat. So thank you so much for telling your story. I know there's a lot more there that we didn't get into, but I appreciate you. We're going to turn this off, but y'all can stay on the line so we can say goodbye to you. But before we do that, are there anywhere other than your website, which I will put in the show notes, is there anywhere else that people can find you and communicate with each of you?
I'm on X. She's smarter than I am. She's not on social media other than Facebook. And, I'm not sure that X is all that good for my psychological well-being either. There's so many experts out there who don't know a damn thing. And that sometimes that drives my hypertension a little bit.
Yeah, I totally get it. Sometimes I'm like, I don't need to be here. So I need to walk away from this. But I get it. So Camille, you're the smart one here because you're not on any of that stuff. Yes. So again, I appreciate you both for joining us, and everyone who joined us in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us while we were live today. We will be back in 2 weeks with another guest, and can't wait to have that person on. I think you all will enjoy that as well. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Pleasure.